Good evening, TNT family. We are back once again on another Saturday night, and tonight we are fortunate to have our General Senator David Nakhid, a champion for our young people on the ground fighting, and we deeply appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Also on the panel here, we have two economists, Mr. Aljun and Nadina. So, Senator, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Nice to be with all of you. I'm looking forward to a very productive program.
So, we saw that what's taking place in the country. I am outside. The two economists, Nadina, Mr. Arjun, is within the country with you. So, if you can enlighten us a little bit on what's taking place and your plan of action, should we take government, in resolving these issues. We are dealing with the issues with the school children, the community issues where there's a total breakdown, a lack of resources. I mean, you know exactly what it is that we're dealing there. If you could enlighten us a little bit of what's taking place, we would deeply appreciate it.
Well, there are a plethora of issues that are so numerous. I mean, we literally right now in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't know where to start. But let's start where our political leader always says. First of all, we have to deal with the safety and security of our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the most pressing issue. If you ask anyone, they're going to tell you no one in Trinidad and Tobago feels safe or secure. Within their home, on the street, going to the supermarket, going to school, going to pick up their children. I mean, we have murders being committed literally in schools, on the doorsteps of schools, outside of school, where it's supposed to be the most sacred place of learning for our young people of Trinidad and Tobago. This government has faltered, it has failed, it has broken down. So right now we're in a situation where people are literally scared for their lives, literally scared for their lives doing mundane tasks throughout Trinidad and Tobago. That's one. Then we have to start thinking about how are we going to get our young people of Trinidad and Tobago into meaningful employment. The PNM model of CPEP and URP jobs, where most of our young people are directed towards what we call substandard employment just geared towards them existing, eking out a living, and serving in 1% jobs, fast food outlets, retail stores, and so that's no longer tenable within Trinidad and Tobago. We have to give our young people meaningful employment. I mean, we have so many doctors, so many nurses who are migrating, leaving the country. There's a serious brain drain going on within Trinidad and Tobago that no one is speaking about it because, of course, we know the mainstream media is completely controlled by the PNM. And we have to realize that unless we address those two major issues, everything comes out of that. People do not have jobs. They're going to fall into a cycle of poverty and they're going to start going into a life of crime. It is as simple as that. To all the PNM sycophants and idiots who do not understand that all studies point to the fact that once that you are in a cycle of poverty, you're going to enter a life of crime if there's no alternative to you. Not everyone, and they like to say, well, we have so many people who came out of communities in the ghetto that made it, and so that is entirely a specious argument. We do have people who made it out of communities that we considered ghettos. I mean, my mom was one of them. But not everybody has that model that they can follow, that story that they can follow. Those are few and far between, and we should celebrate them. But the truth of the matter is, we pay our hard-earned tax money that we are struggling to find now in Trinidad and Tobago because of the high food prices, because of the inflation, because we know that the 1% mafia that the PNM entertains and facilitates are giving us an import bill of 8 billion per year. So our local agriculture is almost devastated. All of these things contribute to a lack of jobs, a lack of forex, a close down of small and medium enterprises. It's all related. It's all part of a cycle that leads eventually to a lot of young people going into a life of crime. And I make no excuses for anyone who enters that life of crime. But it's up to us to mitigate those circumstances before they enter a life of crime. And Keith Rowley and this PNM government has obviously shown to everyone that they are not concerned. They are only concerned to meet African and Indian boys within the penal system. Lock them up, throw away the key, shoot them down, extrajudicial killings. All of these things, this PNM government has no problem with. Call them cockroaches, call them that. Well, we know under a caring government, under a Kamla Prasad Bisasa government, who created 50,000 jobs between 2010 and 2015. That's gonna lay the platform for people to start thinking about having a meaningful life. This URP, CPEP, this propaganda narrative of a neo-colonial government that this PNM has always been giving us just hollow portfolios where healthcare is basically just free healthcare in name only. We all know that. There's no substance to that healthcare being free and substantive. We know that it's a joke. And it's the same thing now with our education system. The one thing that we could have said that the PNM contributed to, they no longer can claim. They have absolutely failed in building of infrastructure of schools, rehabilitating schools, renovating school infrastructure. And it's all corruption. It's a thief of money with this PNM government. And we see it in the statistics, where we see $270 million was allocated to rebuild schools in the last 8 years, and nothing has been done. Nothing has been done. But you don't hear that coming time and time again. People like to point to 2010, 2015, but look at the work that was done and accomplished between 2010 and 2015, and where all that money went into 106 new schools, into a functioning education system where over 70% of people were passing. Now we have 48% of people passing those exams, 52% failing. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, in any other country, serious country, this PNM government would have been running tail between their legs, looking for extradition into another country. But it is what it is. And sorry for my long run-up, but I just wanted to let you know that there are so many issues, but these are some of the more pressing issues. Of course, the government will come. The government will come and tell you, like they said in the last days, hold, strain, wait. In 2027, things will look better and brighter. A promise of a new day, a new dawn, begging people, in other words, to hold on, tighten their belts that they can't tighten anymore. No more holes in that belt to tighten. People starving, people really facing food insecurity, and they're telling you hold on to some gas field or some open up somewhere that may never happen. No thought or vision towards diversity, diversifying the economy. No thought, no vision about that. Just hollow promises. And a promises are comfort to a fool. And among the PNM sycophants, we have many fools, and that's just a fact. And that's where our country has reached.
Well, I want, first of all, I want you to feel absolutely free, because you're not limited here on this channel, to use as much time as you feel to explain what you have to say. I deeply appreciate taking the time. So while we see the government is telling people to tighten the belt, we don't see them tightening the belt. Now the budget is going to be Monday, and for the past budgets, we have seen no accountability. We cannot get a straight answer how the money is being spent for the past 9 budgets from them. We've seen the battle with the Auditor General, and what was it now? The Procurement Regulator General now is the new thing. So we have seen all these things, and it's like you're not supposed to ask any question, and they can do whatever they want with it, and they're coming back with more money and more money again. So we have to rise up and stop them. So we deeply appreciate you, the work that you're doing on the ground there, and we try to lend as much support as possible from our end overseas. And we want to encourage those that are overseas, to jump in and try to assist as best as they possibly can, doing whatever they can.
Well, we only need to highlight that issue, which I highlighted in detail, the issue of the Auditor General. Here we have a woman holding an independent office. And we know so many of our independent offices have been compromised by Keith Christopher Rowley. We know that. I mean, we have people who continue to fool ourselves. As we say in the Arab world, we like to hide behind our finger. And it's impossible to do that. But we have people who love to do that. We'll hear our people talk about, no, our offices are, independent offices are autonomous and nobody influences them. That's crap. Bull crap. Keith Christopher Rowley has compromised the president's office. Has compromised the president, the office of the Auditor General, as we saw, and so many other offices, the Commissioner of Police. I mean, the EBC, the Auditor General, to their surprise, stood firm, held their ground, because we can tell that probably in the past there was a pattern of bullying done by the PNM ministers of finance. But this Auditor General said no. She said no. She held firm and exposed the PNM for who they truly are. They are a bunch of conniving, corrupt individuals. And she told them, well, there's people like myself, I highlighted the 2.6 billion that has gone missing that they could not account for. And they tried to, with different stories. 1 minute was electronic digitalization and a check clearing system. And then they tried to say reconcile it with bringing up new papers. And she said no. When she looked at even those papers that were submitted newly, after the date, backdated. When we looked at those, she looked at those, the Auditor General, Jawanti, I forgot her last name, but
Ramdas.
Ramdas. When Jawanti Ramdas looked at those papers, she realized that the PNM could not reconcile those figures. That there were so many things missing, so much money missing. There were contracts awarded without proper procurement. There was money that was allocated that couldn't be accounted for. When they looked at for the work done, no work was done. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. Had that been a UNC government, and I'll be very clear, because the racism runs deep, the racial insanity of the East-West corridor, particularly towards Port of Spain, runs deep. Had that been an Indian Prime Minister, had that been Kamala KPB in the Prime Minister's office, this country would have gone mad. This country would have gone mad. And that's why I talk about all the time how people, especially some of our people, especially in the UNC, or some people who sit on the fence, how they don't even realize how skewed their integrity and their morality is. Because they look, and I spoke about what we call those so-called knife and fork Indians, that are up and down the East-West corridor, some in Central and South, but mostly on the East-West corridor. How they're longing to belong to whatever they perceive as that comes out of Port of Spain. I call it the tongue narrative. Whatever the narrative is in tongue, they like to mimic and parrot. So the tongue narrative pushed by the PNM and their propagandists, PNM and UNC is the same. So you hear a lot of knife and fork Indians, as they talk, PNM and UNC is the same. and they're saying that to loud applause, and they think they have said something substantive, which is crap. A close look at all statistics, a close look at policies and programs will tell you that the UNC has been way better than the PNM when it comes to performance and delivery of goods and services to the people of Trinidad and Tobago with the money given. But you have to understand the deviousness and diabolical nature of the PNM to realize where we are going. The PNM know they have not delivered, and they're standing on the ground, especially in the east-west corridor where they have gerrymandered the boundaries and so, in a way that it's very difficult to beat them. I mean, if you look at a map, a general election map or local government election map, I mean, the PNM shouldn't be in existence. I mean, the UNC controls the popular vote, and if you look at these swaths of territory, you see this little red up in the northwest, in the east-west corridor, that they've gerrymandered it. So, but that's something we would have to deal with when we come into government. But the PNM has done that, and now even among, and I'll tell you something that a lot of people do not realize. There's more disaffection for the PNM among their base than people would like to believe or let on. The PNM, therefore, they have realized that they need to solicit a lot of what we call the knife and fork Indians. The Indians who have such a low self-esteem that they want to belong. They want to belong to that political class that the PNM controls and facilitates. So they see all these people popping up all of a sudden, and they parroting that narrative. They say things like, Raleigh must go and Kamla must go. And they ask them why you're equating the two. Kamla has been in power for the last 9 years. She hasn't taken the country down the rabbit hole that we are in. So why you make this statement? They can't answer you. They say, well, they'll call it age, or they'll say some pedestrian garbage that we know it has no relevance. But they get some sort of traction by the Polish people, because for them, having the status quo remain is beneficial to the PNM, and the PNM, one thing they know is how to steal and manipulate elections. They don't know how to govern. They don't know how to have a vision for the country. They don't know how to have policies and programs that can shift the culture, that people have a more express approach to life and their work and so. They don't know how to do all of that. They know how to remain in power and give contracts to their 1% friends and financiers and family. They know how to do that. But when it comes to governing, the PNM has clearly shown they're not up to the task. And we've seen it in several episodes throughout our history. We've seen it how the country was devastated between in their 30-year rule up to 1986. The NAR had to try and fix it with a lot of things, and they had as we know, a very hard time doing that. And then a coup came, which I have my own opinion about that as far as where the PNM and their involvement in that, but that's for another time. And then again,
same sentiments here.
And then they came in, and then Manin came into power, and then Basio Pandey, who came in with oil at $8 a barrel, ran this country like no one has seen before, and restored the country to a level of balance and equity. And then Manin came in and did the same thing and he did again. So when Kamla Prasad came in 2010, had faced with the same situation and delivered like nobody else, and 106 schools built, 50,000 jobs created, sport was at an all-time high, the feeling on the ground was a certain degree of safety that we haven't seen in the last 9 years. And then Rowley came in 2015, and here we are. So, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, so all the propaganda that Rowley and they try to espouse, and with all their trolls, I mean, they would do better keeping some of that money. They pay their trolls and internet tropes, or whatever you call these idiots who just bombard the internet, trying to protect the PNM and bat for the PNM. They will do better using that money for social and cultural programs. And it's a pity that we see the level of discord, disharmony that Rowley has created, where the country is a serious polemic within the country, right? So, having said all of that, we wait for the budget, because that's how things are done within a so-called democracy. We wait for the budget. We know they will come with lots of lies, deficit finance, budget deficit financing. They will come with a lot of sweet promises to try and uplift the people, but it will be lies. I mean, Rowley has already come to front, gone to front and said that all you have to hold on. In other words, is salt between now and whenever. It's not 2027. Whenever Rowley is in government, or PNM is in government, the majority of the country will be sucking salt, because they have no ideas. They have no idea how to run a country. They have no idea how to diversify the economy, to create alternative revenue streams. They have no idea. They haven't created one new income stream in 9 years, not one. They lie and talk about they have created new streams within the manufacturing sector, especially this reprehensible Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi, whatever her name is. All lies when they talk about trade. When we look at this, they have just shifted, transfer price shifting and taken industries that were previously in the energy sector and moved it here. And they have not created one new revenue stream.
Correct.
For 9 years.
Correct.
So I mean, it's dark times. I don't know what you're talking about. Right now, in the last 9 years, the dark days, I must commend my opposition colleagues. As Israel Khan said, he says a lot, but most of the time, what he says comes from the heart. He says this opposition is the best opposition he has seen. He says it's not easy to be in opposition for 9 years within such a system. And this country, PNM has tried their best to make it PNM country by infiltrating all these public services, all these commissions, and a lot of the permanent secretaries. And I will say it openly. People that are supposed to be independent, and so they are PNM. They are PNM. And okay, everybody has a preference when they come to food. But when you do your work in a public service commission, you are supposed to do your work with fairness, without prejudice. You cannot be wearing your PNM at that time. And they do that. That's how much our commissions, our public services has been stained by this Christopher Rowley. Listen, only history, only time, when we look historically at this kid Christopher Rowley, we realize what an evil, reprehensible, despicable tyrant we had in government. We will not be able to see it now. Right now, we need melee, we need maelstrom. We need mayhem and confusion. But when there's distance taken, people will realize. People will. I am telling you this now. There's no citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, when we look back at Christopher Rowley, with a certain distance and with a certain objective perspective, there's not a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago who will not say Keith Christopher Rowley's name without cursing him. And I say that with all seriousness. They will that there's not one single citizen of Trinidad will not curse Keith Christopher.
Senator, I want to support you on that. We stand and bear witness to the worst government this country has ever had. We stand and bear witness to destruction that we have never been seen before in our history, in our independent history. And when we hear people talking about both governments are the same, the UNC and the PNM, I ask, in what sick world is an average of 300 murders equivalent to an average of 600 murders a year? You have just devalued my life in half by doing that, because 300 is half of 600. And that is what that person has done who equates both governments. That person who equates both governments, Senator, and to those who are listening, equate a ministry or a minister of education who opened schools not meeting OSHA standards, with rat droppings, with toilets that are not working for our students, to a government that produced over 100 new schools. You tell me how those two could ever be equal. And it is disheartening that the culturally challenged Indo population in the East West corridor, in their need to be accepted in some form or fashion, or whatever challenges they have with their own culture, can put upon us this millstone, as you said, to destroy our country. Because if they don't realize that the blood is on their hands just as much as it is on Rowley's, then we are in for some difficult times. And the only thing we can do at this point in time is to continue to educate our population in time for the next general election so that their eyes are open. So I just want to add to that with what you are saying there, Senator.
I think it's not so much not an acceptance of their culture. I think these knife and fork Indians, as I refer to them, and there are quite a few of them, and I think, as you've said, it's more I would like to say it's an obsession to be socially accepted, and they feel that in order for that to happen in tongue, everybody I get talking about tongue. That's why I love to say, Medina, my sister, I love to say, I from the east, as a Saint Joseph man. You know what I mean? Because this wanting to be accepted by society, and especially tongue society. I don't know if it's to be seen out and about, and for them to say, well, yeah, I don't know if it's a denial of their Indianness. I don't know if it's a denial of 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 themselves as Trinbagonians, and be happy and feel happy within their space. But it's sad, because I recognize it immediately. Because thank God, when you grow up with parents who let you know who you are, you don't have that. So when I look at it, and I see it's sad. You know how they will just parrot the narrative of the PNM, or what the narrative that the PNM would like to be parroted, and they come out and they say that. And if you see them themselves, how they feel so ingratiated and self-aggrandized, that they could come and say, well, UNC and PNM is the same, and of course the PNM sycophants love to run with that, but it's something we have to deal with. And we talk about addressing the cultural and social mores of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that's why the PNM happy to give you a stink and dirty every weekend, to keep people not thinking that is our culture, rather than knowing exactly what is our culture as Trinbagonians, and that we are so diverse, but all of it results in a culture that's common to all of us at some point in time. So whoever we pray to in our own homes, in our own churches, our own mandis, our own mosques. When we come together on the street, in the workplace, in the sporting field, we have a common culture. And that common culture is not stink and dirty, as the PNM likes to promote. It's not that. It cannot be that. Because we're too intelligent as a people. We're too diverse and our cultures are so rich, but the PNM would like to keep it as that. They like to make you feel that beads and bikini is our culture because that way they could keep you under the thumb of the PNM. But
Correct.
all of that, I don't know if I'll have to leave you, but my battery is showing very low. I'd like to ask the moderator if he can give me time to probably charge and get back in the show if possible.
If you have a device where you could get to plug on a charger somewhere close by, you can get by.
Yes, I will get it. I will get it and charge it
Okay, so
and get back in.
right. So Nadina and Arjun, if you guys can make some comments on what our senator says in the meantime while he's
So
getting
let me
his.
just make a few comments
In
in
a couple
relation.
minutes.
Yeah,
Okay, take your time.
just to react to some of the things that the senator said, and he's correct, to the extent that he's on the ground and seeing it firsthand. But the narrative that is being told is a narrative that works in the favor of the PNM, and really, when you have a government that cannot stand on its performance to be re-elected into office, because really there's very little they can point to in terms of performance. When you can't do that, you have to find alternative ways to stay in power. And the PNM are masters at that. I mean, they've really, really excelled in that area. So they keep telling the narrative. And the latest statement by the Prime Minister to the population to hold strain will come, no doubt, in this budget as a follow-up. They will come to paint the picture that yes, things are bad, but if you take God out of your thoughts and change governments next year, then crapo smoke your pipe. That is going to be the narrative that they're going to tell, because they really find themselves with their backs against the wall and with limited finances that they will not be able to throw enough corn on the ground for the fowls to feed on. That's a given. I mean, this budget deficit, we're going to get another deficit, and this deficit is going to be, maybe of the magnitude of $10 billion. So the government does not find itself in a place where it can, bring a sweet budget in an election year. I don't think they have the financial capacity to do it. They will try, but I don't think they have the financial capacity to do it. Now, I don't know how many people paid attention to the recent move by the central bank to reduce the reserve requirements for banks. I think that was in July. They reduced the rate from 14% to 10%. That is not coincidental, What that has done is released a certain amount of money into the financial system that the PNM is going to draw upon, so that they are going to finance. Remember, a $10 billion budget deficit means that there's a shortfall in revenue of $10 billion. That has to come from somewhere. And they're going to go into the financial system and borrow their way out of that deficit. And how many people are paying attention to where the government's total debt is? And all we are doing is transferring that burden from this generation to the next. And it is okay if you're using the money to invest in, to spend on investments, because investments will bring a rate of return and a revenue stream down the road. But they're not spending the money on investments. In fact, the record of this government on the infrastructure, for example, is horrible, horrendous. So they're not spending money on infrastructure. The money is being spent basically on consumption. So there is going to be no returns, except the political returns, of course, no returns from the expenditure that is going to come from this budget. So the government really find themselves into a very difficult position now. And to tell me in 2024 to hold strain until 2027 is an admission that you have failed in your last two terms. And what they're telling the country is we have failed in the last two terms, but give us a third term and we will fix it. We will hit the jackpot in 2 years' time. That is what they're telling the country. And I don't know how many people are going to buy that narrative, right? And that is basically what the Prime Minister is saying. Now, COVID-19 came in 2019, well, more in 2020 really, but provided an escape route for the government. So for 2020, 21, 22, 23, they were able to take the narrative to this country that, listen, the whole world is in trouble. Economies are crashing around the world. It's not just Trinidad. But listen, we are doing well and we are doing better than most. So much so that in 2022, I believe it was, 2 budgets ago, the finance minister came on in his budget presentation to much thumping of tables in the parliament and told the country that the economy has turned around, that revenues are on the increase. And he went on and on and on with his usual trademark smirk on his face, telling this country how well the economy was doing. And people like me who knew better was just saying, but what is this man talking about? Where is this coming from? It was a total flagrant lie that he was telling the country, but the country bought it, and mainstream media took it and ran with it. And therefore, to come 2 years later and tell us to hold strain for a further 2.5 years is really an admission that you lied to us when you told us that we came out of COVID-19 and the collapse of the economy in 2020. And that is what it was. Now, let me address another thing. I think one of the things that are happening in Trinidad and Tobago right now is that people are just simply frustrated on a daily basis, seeing no hope. So there's a sense of hopelessness that pervades the society. And that is the kind of context in which everything must be placed, because people are getting up every day and you know, the official statistics of 5% unemployment is so horribly off course. People are getting up, not much people have place to go to work. A lot of people have no sense of a future that is bright. So hopelessness pervades. And that translates itself into the way people behave. And you hear people say people are so, you know, short fuses and so on and so forth. But it is generally a reaction to what they are feeling on the ground every single day. You go to the supermarket, you feel it. You drive your car on the road, you feel it. Everywhere and everything is facing you, so that, you know, you have to be so careful if you bump into somebody now, because people are just, you know, you feel that they are short fused. And that is simply a reflection of the sense of hopelessness that pervades the society at this time. And you see it even among our school children. What is they'll ask the question, what is the sense in going to school and studying so hard, getting your O levels, getting your A levels, going on to university and getting a degree? And when you get your degree, where do you go from there? There is nothing there for you. And it is simply because this present government has adopted an economic model that is not going to do anything for this country. When you look at the people who finance this government, the financiers of this government, they have forced the government to go and adopt a particular economic model where we have become a nation of importers and distributors. So we import and distribute. There is no value added taking place in the economy, because the value added is where employment will be generated and created. To be an importer and a distributor, all you need is a warehouse and a factory shell. That's all you need. And very little employment will take place in that kind of scenario. Yesterday, I drove through some sections of Arangwes, off the main road. And to my shock and horror and surprise, the amount of factory sheds are now sitting on arable land that was once used to feed this country. And it is not by accident that this is happening all over the food basket of this country. It stares you in your face as you drive down, as you make the bend by Grand Bazaar heading towards Port of Spain. You see all of these factory sheds on both sides of the highway. And those of us who are old enough to remember that we used to once see tomatoes and cabbage and lettuce growing on those same grounds. But the ones who are by nature importers and distributors are the ones who control this present government. They see no need for us to do that. We buy it, bring it in, and distribute it. And that's how they make their money. And therefore, that's the way they're pushing this government. That's the direction they're pushing this government. And that's the direction that our economy is going in. So it's unfortunate that that's the economic model that we have adopted. And I throw that in the face of those who tell me that both administrations are the same. I said, well, do you really believe so if you look at their policies? I remember from a previous job that I had going to do a credit rating for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance looked at me and said, listen, I don't want to be rated vis-a-vis my counterparts in the Caribbean. He said, that is not the playing field that I am operating on. We are the Singapore of the West. And that was 2012, just about 12 years ago. Today, we are the laughing stock of the Caribbean. In just 10 years' time, 10 years later, the laughing stock of the Caribbean. I'll stop there for now.
Excellent, Arjun. Is the senator back? Gary, you know?
Yes, I'm back. I'm back.
David, Senator, I just want to put something on the table that I hope people are connecting. That statement by Rowley for the people to hold strain came shortly on the heels of some economists and the energy chamber speaking to $250 billion over the past 9 to 10 years being put on transfers and subsidies. Forgive me if all my figures are incorrect, but I'm pulling from memory here, right? And that reference to 250 billion, the tone and the language that was used around it spoke to a burden on the purses of the treasury by the population. What they failed to do is to tell us that close to 100,000 persons are now off the labor force, the active labor force, between 2014 and 2024. And that 100 to close to 100,000, if we say that those persons were to earn a minimum of $7,000 a month, that would be $8.4 billion a year. Over the 10-year period, that would be $84 billion. And if we have a multiplier of just 2, that would be close to $168 billion that have been sucked out of this economy by this government simply by the reduction in the labor force and the unemployed persons. So to come and talk to me about a burden of $250 billion when you have sucked out $168 billion simply by the reduction in the number of employed is misleading and does not speak to the state of the country. And it is important that we look at the double messaging that came back to back. So I want to put that on the table. And I want us to recognize, as the senator was saying, and as Arjun was saying, who is really leading this country and who is putting out the narrative for us to accept there. So I will leave that there for the senator to chime in again.
Thank you, Nadina. Senator David, uh,
Yes, I'm here with you.
uh, you could go ahead and respond.
Well, I think that's an excellent submission there, Medina. It's very clear that they like to play that they are so self-righteous in their behavior, the PNM. But I'll tell you something that my father used to say, who was, I come from a PNM family. But when he realized what was going on, because, we talk about economics, and everybody here is famous. So I did economics in university, and we have two economists here as well. But as a lot of professors would tell you in economics, although we like to talk and put up numbers about economics, sometimes within those numbers, they tell a story. And sometimes the numbers do not tell a story. And and that story I'm referring to is the feeling within the country. Now, Imbert will come and say that unemployment is, I think he said 2.8 or 3.4%. That is the unemployment figure. You ask anybody in Trinidad and Tobago if they feel that is the true or that is the real figure of unemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. What they will tell you. Does anybody feel here that we are, because basically those numbers are telling you we are maximum employment, that they are all the jobs taken. Does anybody in their right mind believe that to be true in Trinidad and Tobago? Do all these people on the breadline struggling for jobs, people who have gone into the informal economy, people who have gone into the underground economy, do they really believe anything that this government has to say about the employment? They don't. And when we're talking about governance of a country, it's about perception. If you're telling me you are you are governing the country, and you are telling me that the country is safe, but I do not feel safe. I do not feel safe when I go outside to drop my children to school, when I go to the supermarket, when I take my wife and children out in the car to go to the beach. Then you could come and tell me what you want. My perception and the perception of the people on the ground in the country is the reality. So this government
So you're
has
not
no
even.
choice. Sorry? Hello?
I said you're not even safe in your house. You're not even safe in your house. You know.
No,
Exactly.
but
So there's
Senator,
no safe zone.
Senator,
Exactly.
may I interject here?
Please.
The Prime Minister himself told us in 2015, just before the general election, that we will judge the government by not the figures and the statistics, but by how you feel about your
Correct.
security. He said
Correct.
that.
Very, very correct. And that is true. That is true. And that tells the tale of this PNM government. Everyone knows and feels that this government has failed. That is a fact. And I repeat it, especially in the PNM communities, because most of the crime comes out of PNM constituencies. That also is a fact. And that is not only a fact, that is the feeling on the ground. We know that those communities, PNM constituencies, are hurting. And then we wonder, well, why do these people who seem to vote against their own interests continue to do so? Well, all sociologists and all socio-economic um, figures will tell you, well, it's not a long stretch to the understanding of that. People who remain within a dependency syndrome, which is what the PNM has done intentionally in their constituency. I am telling you that is not happenstance. That is not, the PNM has intentionally crippled socially and economically their own constituency. in order to maintain them in a state of servitude to the PNM. They have done that. You cannot tell me. I know we have a lot of dunces within the PNM, and this PNM and this particular Rowley-led government. And I'm not being pejorative by. I'm not being. I'm telling you. I am in the Senate. I follow the debates. The PNM has 3 or 4 people who can debate fairly well. If you look, they have about 8 or 9 people who never speak. I think we know that. One of them is Ford in Tinapuna, Monroe. I mean, a bunch of dunces in the Senate. The one who just get fired, and others. This is a particularly abhorrent government. So they know that the only way to maintain their grip on power is to what? Have agents who appear to look like the base of the UNC speak bad about the UNC, to perpetuate a narrative that the mainstream media has helped with about the UNC. In other words, they cannot tell you anything that the PNM has done. What they can tell you is what the UNC didn't do. And the UNC has been in government for 9 years. And it will work in a country like Trinidad and Tobago precisely of all the things we spoke about before. A lack of cultural awareness, social awareness, a lack of situational awareness. All of these things contribute to why they seem to get through. But I'll tell you what, not this election. I think people, even within the PNM constituencies, you see, we cannot expect people within the constituency of the PNM to come out and voice their support. Only a few brave people will do that. What they will do, they will bide their time, they will bite their lip. But I tell you, there will be a surprise coming for the PNM whenever they call the elections, within their own constituencies. God willing, I'll be proven right, because really and truly, not us, not the people who can get employment, not the people who have a certain level of education, but God help those same PNM constituencies, so the PNM come back in the government. God help us all.
Yeah, God help us all, Senator. And I think we must remember what this government came into power on. This government came into power on the propaganda of Emailgate. And they, in my mind, they don't plan to give up power that easily because they have too much to cover up over the past 9 years. Budgets unaccounted for, monies unaccounted for. And we will continue to fight the good fight to save our country, to save our people, and to get rid of the dictatorship that is before us. It is our only choice, and the UNC is the only choice that we have right now. We live in a two-party state. Come jump high or jump low, and we have one solution. And yes, may Allah protect us and guide us. But with that, Senator, with that, Arjun, with that, Gary, I must take my leave at this point in time. So I will leave you gentlemen to continue the discussion, and I will join you on another occasion. Salam alaikum, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you
Good night.
very much, Nadina. Thank you very much. So, what I think we have to focus on is to continue educating the people, showing them what we are trying to do and what the objective is here. Because you have to keep singing it, because the propaganda is so deep and
Well, that's
wide that you
exactly,
have to keep.
Gary. That's exactly the point. We have to counter the propaganda that is being put out there, and believe you me, one of the key strengths of the PNM is the propaganda machinery. They're very good at it.
Our people within the UNC have to get up. Like I had our MP David Lee and Deputy Political Leader Chief Whip here, last week, and we need the volunteers. People are not volunteer. They don't seem to understand how important it is for them to participate. This is not a spectator sport. This is a war for your own survival, your own security, your own self-interest and future. Even if you're retired, you still have needs. You have needs for medication and different things. Nothing is working right in the country. You can't even get a hospital bed. I'm hearing too many stories. You know,
Well,
It's not a.
sometimes it becomes a certain there's a certain degree of selfishness involved. I think a lot of the population, when they become fed up with the PNM and they become frustrated, and this happens even within our own base um, of the UNC in certain countries. I can tell you this for a fact. And a lot of our base, they have their own, they are self-employed, and their success or their wages, they believe doesn't really depend on the government. And you hear them make statements by, Senator, well, I mean, I had to go to work, even if it's PNM or anybody had to go to work. I don't need them. I make, and they don't realize that how, because of a whole host of economic factors, should a good government be in place where the economy is doing well, it will be down to their benefit. You see, but now it's coming home to them, because now we have a government that has failed in bringing in new income streams. They have to implement this dreaded, this hated property tax that will affect everybody. And I mean everybody on the ground, not affecting Imbud and his buildings, but it will definitely affect a lot of the people who are normal working class people. So I think now
and the
they're
thing about
beginning
it, some
to.
people are rooting for this. The thing about it, some people on the PNM side was rooting for this. To pay this property tax, not realizing that it would trickle down to them.
Exactly. It didn't affecting Alrawi, it didn't affecting Imbut, but it will affect the normal Ravi and Roger. It will affect them. But our people are beginning to realize that you cannot remain in a silo. You cannot be insulated from the problems of the country as a whole. It will come back to bite you. Because a lot of our people who live in good neighborhoods just say, well, I live in a good neighborhood, I okay, and then you realize that crime was occurring in some of the wealthy in Valsain. A woman, a few times, homes were invaded, and in other upscale neighborhoods in Goodwood and in Bayshore. And then all of a sudden you realize that you cannot remain. And there's this quote I like to quote. You can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring that reality.
But I think a lot of it is not reported. A lot of incidents have not really been made public. But what is most alarming recently is the police vehicle being utilized to pull over someone and kidnap them. And I mean, now you may be very skeptical of driving home at night or someplace and want to pull over when you see the police vehicle.
But Gary, that's not the
This.
first time that happened. Huh?
No, no, I know it's not the first time, but it's the most recent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the first time.
So you coming home from a late hour or whatever it is, and police vehicle flashing their lights, you would be kind of hesitant. And I have heard quite amount of complaints about police involvement in criminal activities and criminal gangs. A lot I would not say here at this time, but it's not the first time we get any complaints. And nothing being done about it. We are very concerned about the management and supervision of the police force, and same goes with the defense force and the coast guard, because I mean, right now we can't blame the Coast Guard for anything at this point. But I mean, it's been a long history of anything can walk right in. So I mean, these are very alarming things that we are very concerned. I mean, nobody is safe, and we should all realize that we need to come together. So Senator Nakhid. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I'm just saying that these are the things that we're concerned about. I mean, look, a lot of us outside the country are staying out because of the crime. A lot of us who wants to even return home is not doing so because of the crime. So we are hoping that we can get a government that will work with us. And again, our job is just to keep on educating the people.
Well, yeah, we have to keep pushing. There's no doubt about that. We have to keep, as you all said earlier, educating the people, and that's our job. If once you enter politics, I mean, sometimes it's not sometimes, most of the time, it's not clear, plain and easy sailing. You have to do things. You have to speak to people you probably don't would not like to speak to. You have to hear things you wouldn't like to hear. But you keep trying to educate people as much as you can. You never know when you'll get that breakthrough. I remember when I began working in, because I am the coordinator of the Tinapuna constituency. But of course, as Gary can tell you, I go way beyond Tinapuna. I go all the way down into Port of Spain, East Dry River, up Lavantil, St. Joseph. I am literally trying to be
Sandy
everywhere.
Grande, Sandy
Sandy
Grande,
Grande.
Toko Sandy Grande.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times I called
Because,
you.
yes, because I realize that the people on those marginal seats that we need to move the hearts and minds of those constituents. They look to see what the UNC is doing in Lavantil, in East Dry River. So I remember when I began interacting with with people who I know because my mother's side of the family is from Picton, Lavantil. And I began going and speaking to all of these people who I consider family. I consider my people as I do the whole East West corridor. I remember people in the UNC with making comments and which they have now changed. I mean, they will never vote for UNC, and they will never. But it wasn't about the vote. It wasn't about getting them to vote for UNC. They very well may never vote for UNC. But you never know by educating them and by interacting with them, they very well may not vote for the PNM as well. And quite a few of them have taken that stance. So you have to keep educating even your own people. You have to keep educating your own people, and you have to reach out. The PNM, people say, when you be walking, they say, well, don't go in our house. Our house is PNM. For me, no house is PNM. For me, no house is PNM. No house is. You have to approach everyone, and you have to speak with
Exactly.
everyone.
I like that approach, and I've seen you on the ground. I've seen how hard you've been working, and that is so much appreciated. You have the right attitude, right concept, right source of information, and you have the right intention towards these people. Restructuring the community, using sports as a mechanism to channel our children in the right direction. And we notice a total breakdown of community structure. The lack of resources. I mean, you have been in some of those community centers and they're shut down or the poor facilities. You can't get nothing there. Nothing is working properly.
But that,
And
that
so, I mean,
well, brother, that's a whole new topic. Would you believe today I was noticing the poor upkeep of our public facilities as far as sport is concerned? I was right close to the savannah. I'm watching
yeah,
all these teams set up with these young kids from 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. They set up right, and if you see the condition of the savannah, the grass high, unkept. In St. Joseph Savannah, they haven't cut that ground in maybe 2, 3 months. So with all the rain, you can imagine how the young players can't train. Now you are creating a situation where you are giving the young people of Trinidad and Tobago no choice but to be idle and thereby go into a possible life that has a lot of negativity connected to it. I mean, if you're not upkeeping, I mean, we have probably the most stadia per capita in the Western Hemisphere. But when you go there, you cannot go into this to the stadium, use the stadium. No lights, the ground poor, no access, because this government only know about putting up and building stuff. They don't know about maintaining it and upkeeping it because they're only about making money,
They're about mama guy. They're
corruptly,
about mama guy. You know.
mama guy, and corruptly, giving contracts so they can make money. So
Throw a few
if you,
crumbs.
yeah, yeah. So if you
Throw
if
a
you
few
have to
crumbs and they run away the cake.
yes. So if you have to upkeep, you can upkeep a stadium, keep it nice running. You can't not much money in that. But let it go dilapidated and then come and tell everybody, well, you had to build over a new stadium. That's where the money is for them. You know? Like what they did with Skinner Park. $145 million for a useless facility, only good for a P&M Fit is what Skinner Park is reduced to. An iconic stadium like Skinner Park. I played one of my first internationals as a youth player was played at Skinner Park. No, you can't even play a proper international game at Skinner Park. And they will come and feed their people, and their people eager to buy it. A lot of crap, about it's not an international field. They're liars. The PNM is a party of liars. But it is what it is, and we have to try and change that come the elections. Um,
These are
my
the things,
brothers,
Yeah.
I really appreciate being with you all. I too have to leave, and I look forward to being on with you all at another time as well.
Definitely. Thank you very much for taking the time, and we look forward to having you back again on the program here.
Thank you, brothers. Take care.
Thank you.